Merry Christmas. Welcome to the December 1981 edition of the Minister's Tape Club. I hope you will have a joyous Advent as you celebrate the Savior's birth. Isn't this a grand time for serving Christ and His church? Only yesterday I was inspired by Jowett's devotional words based on the arrival of the wise men at the manger. He wrote, "Yes, our wise men must find the key of wisdom in the Lord." It is true that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. To seek mental satisfaction and leave out Jesus is like trying to make a garden and leave out the sun. Without me you can do nothing, not even in the unraveling of the problems which beset and besiege the mind. He continues, if my mental pilgrimage is to be as a shining light, shining more and more even unto a perfect day, I must begin with Jesus and pay homage and worship to His kingly and incomparable glory. Well, this month's State of the Church message comes from General Superintendent Jerald Johnson. He gives helpful guidance on how to face opposition creatively in our work for Christ. I know you will discover several new insights in this message. I am so delighted to introduce my special friend, General Superintendent Johnson.
Have you ever taken notice of how easily you identify as a pastor with the governor of your state, even the president of your nation? As the spiritual leader of a community of persons, you find yourself in the unique position of presenting programs and balancing budgets, only to discover you must convince others that what you have in mind is best for the whole church. It's when you discover that all are not in agreement you are able to empathize with a political leader who finds himself dealing with a recalcitrant legislative body. Such is the lot of a pastor, not only with programs and budgets, but in many other aspects of his capacity as a leader as well. I felt I would like to take this opportunity of communicating in this manner with so many of you by addressing the subject of opposition and how to handle it. Such a discussion has to begin with a right to dissent. The very nature of our government in the Church of the Nazarene recognizes this right. If we give people an opportunity to express themselves and then proceed to criticize their position, if it is an opposite one to that which we are holding, then we, in effect, make mockery of our own manual. Of course, there are basics to which all of us agree in identifying with the church. We are not dealing with these. There are, however, a number of areas where there is room for differing opinions. For example, board members have been elected and given the right of expression. We have councils to which church members have been elected for the same purpose. There is the right for all members of the church, 15 years and older, to express pastoral preference. If a pastor will remind himself that the church is the Lord's and not the pastor's, he has found a secret for being able to relax in his place of service. His confidence is buoyed up by reminding himself that he too is the Lord's. All of this separates the entire situation from any political analogy. The work is eternal and not temporal. Furthermore, dissent gives the pastor opportunity to test his ideas as to their validity. Robot-like yes-men on a board do the pastor no favor if they don't ask questions and expect answers. The give and take in open dialogue creates a climate for mutual trust and understanding. After such a dialogue, the pastor may discover some holes in his own arguments, and will be glad to recognize them, and perhaps even withdraw his own presentations. Sometimes compromise is referred to as an art, and blessed is the person who masters it. Even the renewal vote is an opportunity for a pastor to find the will of God for his own ministry. No one takes comfort when a pastor is voted out. Everyone suffers, the pastor and the congregation. Nor has a bad vote always been an expression of the will of God. I have always been comforted in believing God can work around circumstances to bring about His ultimate will for my life. In other words, a bad vote may require a change of location which seems out of harmony with what would appear to be right for the pastor and his family. But Romans 8:28 goes into play, using the detour to get us to where He eventually wants us. It's at the very point of renewal votes where we are all probably most sensitive. It's a testing time for everyone, and can easily serve to divide a church. This is especially true if the pastor begins a search to find out who voted against him. In the midst of his hurt, the pastor is often tempted to use his pulpit to place heavy guilt on his opposition. There is the accompanying temptation to manipulate the opposition, isolating them, excluding them from fellowship, and, of course, if possible, from any significant places of leadership. If, along with this, the pastor assumes a martyr's role, there will in all probability be a long healing process required before a church moves back into an effective place of ministry again in its community. Agreed. Opposition sometimes reflects carnal attitudes. True. The pastor and his ministry are sometimes cruelly sacrificed. Yet, as God's man, and with the assisting processes available in the church, it is possible for a pastor to rise above such a devastating experience and not just survive, but succeed. The secret seems to lie with the attitude of the pastor. In spite of what would appear to be a most damaging situation, he is still the leader. As a leader, he must minister and use his influence to keep the church from fragmenting. He will have to take his hurts like a man. He does not need to expose his wounds. By the grace of God, he must not let Satan destroy his self-image, but rather, in the midst of what is perhaps the most distressing situation he has ever faced in his lifetime, still stand tall and hold his head high. This is Christ-like and redemptive. After the dust has settled and the pastor is relocated, he will then want to assess his situation to try to ascertain what went wrong. Such an assessment may just help him avoid a repeat experience. This situation just described is fortunately not a frequent one. It can and does exist, however. More frequent are situations where pastors' plans and programs are thwarted by opposition. Endeavors to manipulate people and maneuver church boards will more likely than not backfire on a pastor. The best policy is to be open, straightforward, and convincing. The latter is accomplished only by thorough homework being done. If the proposal is refused, don't react. Instead, wait and let it be tested with time. If the proposal is a valid one, in all probability God and time will both work in your favor to see it come to pass. Likewise, if it is not a valid one, God and time will demonstrate that it was best it didn't go through. Admittedly, there are the occasional proposals which are perhaps the will of God for a church, but which a board refuses to acknowledge as such. When this appears to be the case, a pastor may recognize this as an indicator that his period of leadership is nearing an end and will, without demonstration or dramatic fanfare, but rather quietly, begin praying about a possible move. Sensitivity to the Spirit as to when a ministry in a given place is nearing completion is just as important as recognizing the call of God to go there in the first place. Keeping all of these things in perspective can help keep the romance and excitement in the ministry fresh in the pastor's mind and heart. I do not want to suggest that leadership, always or even frequently requires capitulation. Here again, time will help the pastor win opposition over to his side. This is certainly better than isolating and even losing them altogether. If they get disheartened and leave, let it be their decision, and not one forced on them by threats of the pastor and his special friends. Whenever a boxer in the ring discovers he is in trouble with his opponent, he goes into a clinch with the other. Close to his opponent, the power is taken out of the punches. It gives him time to regain strength and to come out again fighting. I would certainly not want this analogy to be applied 100% in situations I have described, except for the point of getting close to the opposition. Frankly, I think that's a point well taken. I began this discussion by making reference to and comparisons with politicians. A politician must have principles by which he will stand, even if his political life is in jeopardy by doing so. Few of us have any respect for those politicians who endeavor to straddle the fence with both ears to the ground. As a minister, a holiness minister, you have principles to uphold. The doctrinal and ethical positions of the manual must be supported by your leadership. You are, however, a man of God, shepherd of a flock, assigned to serve by God Himself. God is interested in you as a person, as well as a minister, and you can always rely on His help for every situation, no matter how difficult it may be. I heard of a man who was seen driving a group of sheep down the road. He was approached by a stranger who commented, "I thought shepherds led their sheep and didn't drive them." The man replied, "But I'm not a shepherd. I'm a butcher." To be a true shepherd of sheep involves risks and many uncertainties. To get the whole flock safely in the fold is, however, the shepherd's reward. This is the difference. We are shepherds and not politicians. Firm leadership accompanied with loving care will help us accomplish our desires and purposes in ministry. Occasional opposition is simply a fact of ministerial experience. Let's learn how to deal with it effectively and redemptively. God's grace will help us to do so.
Thank you for listening to the Holiness Today podcast. If you enjoyed this production and wish to hear more, visit holinesstoday.org/podcast or find us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts.